sorry for that, everybody. We had some minor technical difficulties. Now we're going to be looking at the Hawkers Brewery.
Yeah, let's get right into it, Jess. We're going to explore the award-winning Hawkers Brewery, which swooped up the name as the Supreme Champion Brewer at the prestigious International Beer Challenge in London in 2016.
Reservoir's super lucky to be home to one of the world's best breweries. It's won the trophy for Brewery of the Year Oceania, along with gold medals for its IPA and Imperial Stout, and silver medals for its Pale Ale, Pilsner and Saison.
Yeah, definitely. So Scarlett Maloney went over to the Henty Street Brewery to take a look and see what the fuss is all about. Let's have a look.
After the world's best beer? You needn't look any further than Reservoir in Melbourne's northern suburbs. Late last year, Hawkers Beer gained the title of Supreme Champion Brewer at the International Beer Challenge in London. Mazan Hajar is the proud owner of Hawkers Beer, who led the brewery to victory.
The philosophy of Hawkers was to try and make consistently good beer.
Mazan's story is one of particular interest. After gaining notoriety from brewing a popular beer in the midst of war-torn Beirut back in 2006, Mazan decided to make the move to Australia for his second brewery venture.
We started selling in February 2015, so we've literally just turned 2 years old. Melbourne was more advanced in terms of craft beer than the other markets, but it was predominantly a lifestyle choice for me. I wanted to live in Melbourne.
Melbourners are welcoming Mazan and his expertise with open arms as Hawkers becomes a household name. The small brewery initially struggled to produce enough beer to meet the growing demand from customers.
So since we started, we've upgraded the brewery 6 times. We started off with 600,000 litre capacity. We can now do 6.5 million litres of beer.
The company began with a line of American Pale Ale, a German-inspired Czech Pilsner, a West Coast American IPA, and a Wallonian-style Saison.
We went through a period where we couldn't do much more because we were just chasing capacity. We didn't have enough production. We were running out of beer all the time.
The popularity of Hawkers Beer only continues to grow, as it features in many pubs and restaurants throughout Melbourne.
The most overwhelming thing for us was how much we've been received here in Melbourne. It's been fantastic. I mean, the reception's been awesome. Much better than we ever anticipated.
Hawkers is set for nationwide distribution from Perth to Queensland, and the beer has never tasted better.
Well, Jess, what's your favourite beer?
I don't know.
You don't really have a favourite beer?
Not really.
Not really?
Whatever's on tap.
Yeah, I kind of agree, but I think it's really interesting to see the Hawkers Brewery and see what they're all about. Their story is quite interesting. It begins as the Crafty Pint, and they had received an email from a wine expert and booze world publisher, which introduced us to, they introduced them to Joseph Abboud, the chef behind Melbourne's popular Rummy and Moore's Head restaurants. Yeah.
So Joseph had actually just returned from a visit to his mother country, Lebanon, which had somehow turned from an exploratory trip to find new flavours for the kitchen into him becoming a beer importer.
Yeah, unfortunately Joseph doesn't actually work at the Hawkers Brewery anymore, but Mr. Hajar, who's been taking the lead at the Hawkers Brewery, first made headlines as the crazy guy brewing beer amid the destruction of the war-torn Beirut, which is very interesting. Very, very interesting. And as the Israelis bombed Hezbollah in July 2006, Mr. Hajar was busy teaching himself to brew beers.
Yes, his brewery became 961 Beer and is now exporting to 26 countries.
Yeah, which is quite phenomenal. It's really interesting, and especially being an Australian-owned beer, we take pride in our beer, and I think, it's really interesting, yeah.
It is, yeah. The first Hawkers beer release was in February 2015. It was a highly aromatic American Pale Ale rolled out of the imposing brewery in Reservoir. It was built as a cost of upwards of $3 million, and 2 days later it was named People's Choice Best Beer at the Great Australian Beer Festival in Geelong.
Yeah, which is really, really amazing how they did that in a short amount of time, and obviously they're reaping in the awards now, which is really good. And as well as that, within 20 days, they actually ran out of pale ale, which is really like extravagant if you can imagine how much beer that they produced at the original time. And while the subsequent 2 releases, an IPA and Pilsner, had started garnering praise from Melbourne beer lovers too as well, which is really good.
Yeah, and barely a day goes by without another seasonal or one-off special flying out of the breweries in Australia. So.
Yeah, if you actually go onto their website, you'll see there's about maybe 20 pages worth of different beers that they've actually brought out in Australia and obviously around the world as well. So I think it's very interesting, and being such a close beer company to us, especially at La Trobe, Hawkers should be really great. And yeah, some of the other beers include, Beer Hop Series IPA 1. They've also got wine. So there's the Mountain Goat Barrel Breed Barley Wine, and there's so many more. There's listings of beer since 2010. So yeah, it's really good. But now we're going to have Lisa come in, and she's going to do the break with our half-hour news of the headlines. What's been happening, Lisa?
Thanks. Well, just an update on what we had this morning. A Metro Rail bombing in St. Petersburg has left 11 dead and 43 wounded. City Square in Melbourne CBD has officially been closed as new Metro Rail construction gets underway. Residents of Rockhampton are preparing themselves for flooding as the Fitzroy River is set to rise. Rises in housing prices are making it even more difficult for young Australians to purchase homes. And proposed legislation in New South Wales intends to ban unvaccinated children from enrolling in childcare centres.
Thanks so much for that, Lisa. We're going to have a short break. It is 11:28. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at the 11th hour _LTU. We'll see you right after break. And don't go anywhere.
Welcome back, everybody. We're so happy to have you here with us.
Yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in. We are welcoming our lovely host, Scarlett. Welcome to the studio. We're considering we have you here. We're going to be talking about some of the most funny and awkward moments of Australian politics.
I can't wait. It's a very colourful life that our Australian politicians have.
Yeah, definitely.
We've got some pretty amazing stuff that's happened over the span of the last 5 years or so up for you today. You can kick us off with a little something that happened at the start of this week.
Yeah, something that I, saw in the news in the last week. Something I really wanted to look at was because of something that actually got me in quite the hysterics. I was actually laughing my pants off. So last Thursday, we saw the Labor Shadow Employment Minister, Brendan O'Connor, question Australia's mainstream media after not a single journalist actually showed up to his press conference. You can hear him saying, where is everybody? And, asking, where, if anyone had tweeted in questions or sent text messages with any questions. And when his media advisor asked anybody, the cameraman actually remained silent. So I thought it was very funny.
When you think about it, though, it would be pretty upsetting.
Yeah, it is very upsetting, but they're all in Canberra anyway, sitting in.
True.
Yeah.
I saw this on the news actually, and it was quite funny. He was walking out to that area that they do all of the reporter speeches with his media lady with him on her phone.
Yeah.
And she looked white as snow, like very concerned that she hadn't like sent the message through to all the journalists. And I suppose it would be quite concerning that the minister had no one interested in what he had to say, considering he's the opposition. The shadow employment minister. You know, you'd think that they'd want to hear what he had to say, and it makes me wonder where the rest of the journalists were that morning. What could be more important?
Yeah,
maybe a squirrel in a park or.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that's why I wanted to have a look at the best funny and awkward moments that we've seen in the last couple of years coming out of Australian politics. So something that I really wanted to have a look at, and I know Scarlett, we talked about this lovely gentleman last week.
We did. We're bringing Clive Palmer back into the mix. We saw him in 2016 counting his cash in Parliament.
Yes.
I just want to note that he only had 10s, 5s and 20s.
Yeah.
So at question times, viewers would have caught a glimpse of the Palmer United Party leader yesterday counting his dollar notes as he sat down in the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
It was really bad timing for the member for Fairfax, who is under pressure to come up with the millions of dollars needed to rescue his failing nickel refinery, which was a major donor for his party itself.
Yeah, definitely.
Is there ever really a good time to sit in Parliament and count your cash, though? I mean, especially when you're in charge of a crumbling venture, but come on.
Yeah.
Well, no, it became an online hit anyway.
It did.
And it was the meme city. It was fantastic.
Lots of memes came out of that, Clivey. And also something that I really wanted to bring up, another extravagant, funny moment. Now, I think you can agree with me, Scarlett and Jess, in saying that this will be never forgotten by anyone when the world, and Australia, of course, saw our Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, chomping on a raw onion on live TV. Yeah.
Yes.
Was it? That's right. He was at an onion farm. And
Yes.
he thought, this onion looks good, and he thought he'd give the produce a try.
Yeah. I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know if anyone knows what he's thinking or what he... Yeah, definitely.
I've eaten an onion before.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did it for a scavenger hunt, though, and I wasn't the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. It wasn't the best look for Abbott at the time as well, and what followed was the end of his, obviously, position in the party as well, and either he wasn't very good at handling cameras or he just got a bit peckish. We'll never really know.
We'll never know if the reason he fell out of Parliament was actually to do directly with that onion or not.
Where is the onion now? Who knows?
Probably somewhere in the ocean or somewhere in some sort of... anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Oh,
so next on the list, I think I've got the next one. Awkward moments have been... is the ever so colourful Jackie Lambie dressed to impress on January 26th. Here we see Jackie sporting a sequin singlet featuring the Australian flag. You know, you can get them from dollars and cents.
Yeah.
Or, you know, she's got a feather hat with the Australian feather colours here, as well as 3 Australian flags on it. I think all up for her outfit would have been $4, which is a bargain.
Yeah, definitely.
And she was asking the people of Australia to... she was doing a video up to YouTube, and she asked them to say the oath of allegiance.
Yes.
Now, fortunately for Jackie, she started reciting the wrong one. Meaning to say the oath of allegiance, Lambie accidentally read out the Citizens' Pledge.
Yes. Which was a bit of a stuff up there.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone actually realised when it first came out
Well,
as well.
if you're an everyday Joe, you probably don't know the difference between the oath of allegiance and the Citizens' Pledge either.
Definitely.
But not only that, she also added at the end some extra on the... following the pledge, saying, remember, if you don't like our laws, equality for all, including women, gay and Indigenous people, then there are plenty of other countries to choose from, which was quite an inflammatory thing to say, especially in a lady of her position.
Yeah, exactly right.
I don't even know what to say about this, really. It's just one big embarrassment, to be honest.
It's a classic case of Jackie meaning well, but overlooking some areas of speech that could be considered insensitive, ill-informed, or simplistic to a wider issue. I think perhaps our parliamentarians should be a little better versed.
Yeah. And now, next up on the list, we also have to mention the moment when Australia saw Julia Gillard fall over.
Aww.
She was, the poor thing, yeah, she just couldn't stand on her 2 feet. It was in 2012 when we saw our former Prime Minister fall over on a trip in India. Quite literally, she tripped, taking a spectacular tumble near the Gandhi Memorial when her shoe bogged in the grass.
Oh, you're digging that one up from 2012.
Yeah, I had to bring that up. I think everyone remembers Julia.
I don't think I've
over.
even seen it.
Really?
No.
You haven't? Far out.
I'll have to go home and Google that immediately.
I think you might have to. Yeah, poor Julia. Yeah.
Well, and last but not least, just one more. This is one of mine and Kristen's favourites.
Oh, yeah.
The time that we saw our former Prime Minister Tony Abbott standing next to a Kevin Rudd cardboard cutout during question time in Parliament.
Man.
C News headlined with "Cardboard Rudd speaks uproar in Parliament." Spark uproar, sorry.
Yeah.
It was not speaking at all.
Yeah.
Which is a headline if ever I saw one. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
The opposition MP brandished a cardboard cutout of Prime Minister Kevin Rudd and demanded that the real Mr. Rudd show his face in question time.
Yeah.
Mr. Rudd was actually in visiting an Indigenous community in New South Wales at the time, and then he was up in Mackay because they had some floods which were really terribly affected the area.
Yeah.
So, he was out and about doing his Prime Minister duties.
It wasn't like he was just skipping question time.
No.
My favourite thing from that moment is just hearing, "Where is the Prime Minister?" and multiple yells, and then you hear the Deputy Speaker, Anna Burke, telling the member of Corpa to remove himself, and multiple yells, everyone sit down, everyone calm down, and all the yells that you hear throughout that question time is something that in the back of my head is just one of my favourite moments. I just absolutely
It was incredible.
adore
I was
it.
actually home from lunch at the time, just watching Parliament, because sometimes I like to flick it on and just see what our MPs are up to. And there was... I couldn't believe it. The scenario went for about half an hour with them saying, if you don't shut up, you're going to have to leave the Parliament. And it was embarrassing.
Yeah.
that these people
definitely.
supposedly run our country. It was
Yeah.
never a dull moment.
Well, I think that is enough of the funny and awkward moments of Australian politics. I'm sure there's so much more to come, but thank you so much for joining us, Scarlett.
My pleasure, thank you.
We'll be sure to have you back next week talking about more fabulous moments in Australian politics.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
And now we're going to have a short break. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at the 11th hour _LTU and tweet us live. It's 11:38. Don't go anywhere. We hope you haven't gone anywhere because we have a great story lined up for you. It is my pleasure to introduce to you all our executive producer, Adam Ioannidis, to chat to us about the recent mass of arrests of gay men in Chechen. Adam, can you tell us what's going on?
I can. It's a pretty crazy story, actually. Apparently, there are reports from Russia that the state of Chechnya is rounding up homosexuals. There's been reports there's about 100 of them. They've been detaining them and even allegedly killing some of them. Now, this is actually the Chechen government that's supposedly committing these acts. The report came from multiple anonymous confessions to the highly held Russian newspaper, the Novoya Gazeta, which translates to the New Gazette. And it's famous and high-held in Russia for its investigative coverage of Russian politics and social affairs. So the actual report states that more than 100 people have been detained and 3 of those have been killed. The Novaya Gazeta has been gone on to say in a second article that they know the identities of the 3 alleged victims but will not release their names. They've also suggested that other victims have been handed back to their families for them to perform honour killings.
Damn.
Which is really weird.
Yeah.
It's not something that would happen here.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, we know that Russia is not the biggest fan of homosexuals. Pardon me.
Yes.
I mean, it was only decriminalised in 1993, and then on top of that, it was taken off the mental illness list in 1999. So it's no secret that whilst it's not illegal anymore, most high-ranking government officials are openly against homosexuality. If you are found to promote any form of homosexuality in any way, then you could be fined up to 116 Australian dollars.
Yeah, which is quite absurd.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy. I mean, it's just simple thing like holding another man's hand, I believe, comes under that
Yeah.
category. If you're a tourist, then it's a slightly higher fee. It's about $2,300
Gee,
actually,
wow.
and you'll be held for at least 15 days. That's the maximum they can hold you for, and then deported. So that's some pretty insane stuff, to be honest. This report from the Chechen Republic rounding up homosexuals and killing some, whilst it sounds like fiction, it could very well turn out to be a real thing. I mean, given all the facts. Alvy Karamov, who is the official spokesperson for the Republic's leader, Ramzan Kadyrov, has shot these statements down, however. A strange comment also emerged from the region's Interior Ministry, calling the report an April Fool's joke. Now, that seems pretty sus, considering that information from various sources had been directed to Ekaterina Sokoryanskaya, who is the project manager for Russia at the International Crisis Group.
Oh, wow.
And this information has been coming in for the last 10 days. Also, that's a pretty intense April Fool's joke.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you throw toilet paper at your friend, you scare them, you release a false casting statement for a big movie franchise, you know?
Yeah.
It's like pranking
Nothing.
your friend,
And then,
false casting,
yeah.
and then this is like 500 meters above the
Oh, yeah.
3-story building we're in right now.
Oh, yeah.
It's weird. So Karamov, who is the president's spokesperson of Chechnya, also felt the need to continue to deny these claims by telling the Interfax news agency, "You cannot detain and persecute people who simply do not exist in the Republic." On top of that incredible statement, he's also gone and put it out there that if there were such people in Chechnya, the law enforcement organs wouldn't need to have anything to do with them because their relatives would send them somewhere from which there is no returning. That is just a really strange thing to say. It's a very bold statement. They're obviously very confident that there are no homosexuals in Chechnya, unless they're clairvoyant, you know, or maybe they did actually round them all up.
Yeah.
Because they seem pretty intense that there cannot be any homosexuals in Chechnya whatsoever. Sokolinskaya from the International Crisis Group has also stated that it's next to impossible to get information from the victims or their families, but the number of signals I'm receiving from different people making it hard not to believe detentions and violence are indeed happening, is making it hard not to believe, excuse me. Keda Saratova, who is a Chechen activist on the president's human rights activist group, the council, because apparently Chechnya actually has a human rights council.
Okay.
They have actively told a Russian radio station, "In our Chechen society, any person who respects our traditions and culture will hunt down this kind of person without any help from authorities and do everything to make sure this kind of person does not exist in our society."
Wow.
So people like Saratova really need a hobby that isn't hunting people down.
Yeah.
You know, different sexual orientation. The original claims came from a very reputable Russian newspaper.
Yeah.
That's claims to be independent.
Okay.
So I guess we'll see if these claims really are true or not.
Yeah.
The Russian Human Rights Council will be launching an investigation into these claims.
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic, and I think it's quite disturbing. And I think I'd really love to see what happens in the next coming weeks, of course, as well.
I mean, there's bound to be developments of some sort.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we should definitely keep it up and, have a look at it next week as well. But thank you so much for joining us, Adam.
Thanks for having me, Kristen.
No worries. It is now 11:45. We're going to have a short break. Don't leave us. We're going to be right back.
Back to Upstart Live. It's time for our sport news now. So I'm here with Brayden May. Brayden, you got some pretty big breaking news out of the NRL.
Yeah, well, in the last hour or so, Cooper Cronk has announced his decision to leave Melbourne and go back to Sydney to be with his partner Tara Rushton, who actually works as a reporter for Fox Sports in Sydney. And he's set to be one of the bigger free agents in the market this year, and it's going to be a huge get for whoever gets him. But more will come to fruition in the coming days, I'm sure. So we'll switch to a sports wrap in the AFL now.
Yeah, mate. It was a big weekend in the footy. We had round 2 kick off on Thursday night with Richmond and Collingwood. And then the game we're going to focus on is the grand final rematch of the Dogs and Sydney. That was won by the Dogs by 23 points. Brayden, what did you make of it?
Well, the Dogs showed a lot of maturity, I thought, in the last quarter. The Swans, led by Buddy Franklin, started pushing the game their way. And then Liam Picken started the show in the last 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, I think he was massive in that last term. There was a piece of play where he ran the length of the ground and kick a goal, and I thought he was huge. Franklin was nearly got the Swans over line, but the Bulldogs have now won their last 4 2 in Melbourne, so that's massive for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I think they're going to be the real threat again this year. Their running game is just unbelievable, and a lot of sides have actually adopted their handball movement, and it's going to be interesting to see if anyone can actually counteract them in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I think they're a massive chance to go back-to-back. The other game at the weekend we're going to focus on was the Crows against the Hawks on Saturday afternoon. They won by 24 points at the MCG, and that's the first time since 2009 that Hawthorn have started a season at 2-0, and that was also the year that they missed the finals.
Yeah, well, Hawthorn, I know it's a poor start, but if you're a Hawthorn supporter, don't get too nervous yet. There's new guys in this side, and they're going to learn the Hawthorn way, and they'll still be there when it counts.
I think that makes this week's showdown a massive game between Adelaide and Port Adelaide. They're both sitting at the top of the ladder, 1 and 2. What do you think that game's going to be?
Well, it'll be interesting to see if Port can bring the pressure of the first 2 weeks, especially against this Adelaide forward line, who will be without Josh Jenkins, who suffered a punctured lug in a very innocuous incident. So it'll be interesting to see how they go with the 3 tools this week, but I'm sure they'll get the job done.
It was a pretty nasty injury that Jenkins was on. It didn't look like there was anything major to it, but he did go to hospital, had scans, and I think he did get the all clear. So he obviously won't play this week, but yeah, they're going to be without Jenkins, who's a key to that forward.
Yeah, and then once again, as we mentioned last week, it was the lesser-known players for Adelaide getting it done. Big shout-out to David McKay. A couple of years ago, his career was on the edge, but his fitness levels on Saturday were just simply unbelievable. There was a few times he just ran the length of the ground, defence and kicked 3 goals in the end.
Yeah, he kicked 3. Adelaide, they look like they're going to be a serious threat to the flag. I mean, they beat GWS last week, who everyone thinks is going to win the flag. They beat a three-time premiership team in Hawthorn. I mean, it's a very tight comp this year.
Yeah, I think Adelaide are going to be the real threat. It is even, as you mentioned, but I think the Giants on the weekend, they put it to Gold Coast, who are going to struggle. But the Giants will be there. They're a young side, and maturity is a big thing in the AFL at the moment. And that's something we've got to watch them, how they develop over the coming months. We'll be there when it counts in September.
It will be, mate. We're going to shift our focus now to this week's hot topic of the week, and it's going to be on the tennis. Brayden, what is our hot topic?
Our hot topic's on the hot-headed Nick Kyrgios, the player we all love to hate. But in recent weeks, he's been actually showing his talent for once.
He has, yeah, mate. He beat Djokovic twice in the past 2 months, and this past week he matched up against Roger Federer, the reigning Australian Open champion, in the Miami Open semi-final. Came up short, 6-7, 7-6, 6-7. But what did you make of his game?
Well, obviously there was an incident where he was caught swearing at the crowd once again. But once again, I think, as we've seen, someone was actually yelling at him again. He showing more mature signs, which I like. And he's always had the ability, the attitude's been the thing. And I think his ability is starting to come to the fore. He's only 16 in the world still, but I think he'll be in the top 10 come the end of the year.
I think that's the thing with Kyrgios. There's a lot of commentary around his attitude towards the game. I don't think he still doesn't have a coach yet. I think that's the main reason why he hasn't taken his game to that next level. I think if he can step it up, let his talent do the talking instead of his attitude. I think Boris Becker came out in the week and said that after that Federer game, he thinks he's a Grand Slam champion in waiting.
Yeah, exactly right. You look at the big four, Djokovic, Federer, Nadal, Murray. They were all young when they won Grand Slams. I think this guy is next. Australia is playing the Davis Cup against America later this week, and their captain, Jim Courier, who we've all seen on Channel 7 during the Australian Open coverage, said it's going to take something special for the United States to actually get past an Australian team minus Bernard Tomic, with Jordan Thompson, the world number 73, in action. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the Davis Cup's going to be very interesting. I think if Tomic and Kyrgios under the tutelage of our great Leighton Hewitt, I think if they can keep playing valuable tennis prior to these Grand Slam tournaments, I think it's going to be a major step in both having a great show at Wimbledon come the middle of the year.
Wimbledon is going to be interesting, especially for Nick Kyrgios. He's shown in the past he can play on grass, and I think he's going to be a real threat to these guys, Djokovic, etc., later in the year.
Yeah, mate. Well, that's all for sport today. We're going to take it back to our host.
Thank you so much, guys. It's been great. We're going to have a short break. It is 11:53. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back, everyone. Let's get right into it. We now have the wonderful Jess Whitby joining us because you've got a lot to tell us about the Melbourne International Comedy Festival.
Yeah, so the Melbourne International Comedy Festival kicked off last Wednesday. It's the 31st year this year, and it's going to run until the 23rd of April. I mean, we're so lucky to have such a big comedy festival in Melbourne. It's 3.5 weeks, and it's one of the biggest festivals in the world, really. It sits alongside the Edinburgh Fringe Festival and Montreal's Just for Laughs Festival, so it's absolutely great that we get to experience such great comedy here in Melbourne.
Yeah, it's truly such a great festival we have here located in Melbourne, and I think it's one of our greatest assets for Melburnians and travellers to see. It tackles more than one demographic too. It offers shows for the whole family to enjoy as well as kids.
Yeah, I think that's something people really forget about festivals, especially the comedy festival. It just covers such a wide range of topics. So, I mean, it's not just stand-up. You get to see theatre, you get to see cabaret, street art, film, radio, television. There's even visual art elements to it. So really, like, if stand-up's not your thing, you can go see a theatre show or you can go see some great street art. And I think that's something that Melbourne really brings to us, is we have such this big cultural scene, and so we're able to embrace all of these forms of comedy in this huge festival. And I mean the range of artists too, like you can go take your little cousins or your little brother and sister to a show during the day, and in the evening go see a big headliner or anything like that. There's so many different artists. There's even like, you get your big headliners like Dave Hughes, Will Anderson, and you get with local artists too. I mean, Tom Walker's a great one. He's just started out in the industry. He won Best Newcomer last year in the festival for his show Beep Boop. And you might have seen him around. He's on the new Channel 10 program, Whose Line Is It? And I mean, it's great that we get the opportunity to support these local artists and really help them build up their career.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely such a Kickstarter for those looking to go down that track in the comedy field, and even just to have it as a hobby on the side. I think it's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so accessible too. Like, for a festival, most of the venues are based around the CBD, so nice and easy to get to. And it's also not even that expensive. In my head, when I think of a festival, I think like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be forking out $30, $40, $50 for a ticket. But I mean, the comedy festival offers tickets for as little as $5 to some show, which I mean, like, that's the cost of a coffee. You can have a coffee in your morning and you can go see some really great local comedy in the evening. They even do for students, they do Tight Ass Tuesdays, so a lot of shows offer cheap tickets on a Tuesday that you can go and see. And I think that's absolutely wonderful. I mean, if you want to go pay $40, $50 to go see best seats in the house for a headliner, like, sure, you can do that, but you can also just spend $5, $10 and support some real local comedy.
Yeah, of course. And I heard that you went and saw Matt O'Kine.
I did.
Yeah.
He only did a short run at the festival, which I think is pretty unfortunate. I think he's a great artist. A lot of people will probably be familiar with him through Triple J's breakfast program. But he only ran 4 days in the festival, which is pretty unfortunate. But it was absolutely wonderful. I think he's such a great comedian, such a great storyteller. And he's someone that his content is kind of relatable to so many demographics. I went with my parents and my dad absolutely loved it. Like, he was repeating jokes in the car on the way home. So I think, like, the comedy festival is so great in that a lot of the comedians, like, really speak to such a bigger demographic. And even though we had a short run, I mean, that gives more opportunity for other artists to come in and have a short run too, or have a go, and just allows wider range of shows for the festival, really.
Yeah, and there's always such a different lineup every night, so you always see something different. And there's also a part of the festival, a great series called Comedians Against Humanity, which features Cards Against Humanity, which is obviously one of the most popular card games out there today. So yeah, there's so much to go through, and yeah, I really definitely want to check it out. I think you've convinced me.
Yeah, you definitely should. I think if you go to their website, comedyfestival.com, you can check out what's on every single night, what tickets are available, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at 11thhour_LTU for more live updates every week. And we hope you've enjoyed the show.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. We'd like to thank our executive producers, Adam, and our second producer, Nisha, for always putting in the hard yards, and everyone behind the scenes. You're always doing a great job. Catch us next week on the 11th hour. But don't go anywhere. Up next is the showdown. So it's a bye from us for now. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.